The stage lights cut through the dark at the Arcasher Amphitheater in Grand Rapids. It's loud. The crowd is absolutely roaring. And an 18-year-old girl who is completely jet-lagged from a 17-hour flight steps out onto the stage just to surprise her heartbroken superstar dad. It's this beautiful, raw, unscripted moment. But within hours, the internet takes this private family embrace and they totally weaponize it.
Yeah, they really did. And the speed of it was honestly staggering. We're looking at a situation where a teenager's attempt to comfort her father turned into this massive, very public target.
Exactly. And it all leads to this massive headline we're looking at today. Jelly Roll's daughter couldn't stay silent anymore.
Welcome to Starscope Report. Join us as we uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame. And for today's deep dive, we've got a really fascinating stack of sources to go through. We are looking at the latest celebrity news, breaking down the sudden and frankly shocking divorce of country star Jelly Roll and his wife, Bunnie Xo.
Right. But we aren't just stopping at the tabloid gossip today. We're crossing that narrative with some dense academic research on the psychology of cyberbullying and this wild study on a phenomenon known as TikTok internet parents. The goal here is to figure out what happens when messy, real-life human trauma collides with an internet culture that fundamentally treats living people like, fictional characters on a screen.
Which is something we all really need to understand, because whether you follow country music religiously or you just spend time scrolling your feed, this dive is going to fundamentally change how you view the people on your screen.
So to understand why that simple concert moment exploded the way it did, we have to rewind a bit. What was happening behind the scenes during that specific week?
Well, the context is incredibly heavy. On May 18th, 2026, Jelly Roll officially filed for divorce from Bunnie Xo. He cited irreconcilable differences. And the legal documents actually listed their date of separation as May 9th.
Which, for the general public, was an absolute bombshell. I mean, it seemingly came out of nowhere.
Completely out of nowhere. Just to give you a sense of the timeline, they had just renewed their vows in August of 2023, back at the same Vegas chapel where they originally got married.
Oh, wow. So this was really recent. And he had just hit those massive weight loss milestones, right?
Yeah.
Dropping over 275 pounds, which he frequently credited to her support.
Right, exactly. And crucially, they had been very open about pursuing IVF to have a child together. It was this heavily documented, really heartbreaking journey where Bunnie revealed they'd actually lost 4 embryos.
That is just devastating. I mean, they were together for a decade. They survived his time in prison, extreme poverty, severe addiction issues. They literally built a whole media empire side by side. And then almost overnight, it's just over.
Yeah, it's a lot to process. Which brings us back to June 13th. Jelly Roll is playing that show in Michigan, and his 18-year-old daughter, Bailee, decides to fly in from a 20-day senior trip to Europe.
Right, so she's exhausted, but she shows up during literally one of the worst weeks of his life to support him. She surprises him, and they launch into an acoustic cover of Green Day's Good Riddance together.
It's a deeply vulnerable performance. But you know how it is today. Moments like that are instantly recorded from 1,000 different angles, uploaded and digested by millions of people across the globe.
And the backlash was just instantaneous. I want to read some of these direct quotes from our sources because the specific language is really important here. People were critiquing the singing, saying things like, "He sounds terrible," or calling it a dive bar in small-town 1:30 a.m. karaoke.
Which is mean, but then it crossed a massive line.
It really did. Commenters started weaponizing her father's secret heartbreak directly against her. One user actually wrote, "Not gonna lie, I'd file for divorce after this too."
It's just a profound disconnect. They are actively using a family's real-time collapse as a casual joke for likes.
But Bailee's response is what really stands out. I mean, she's 18, standing right in the center of a media hurricane. On June 16th, she posts on her TikTok stories. She says, "I am disgusted at how invested everyone is in a very clearly private family matter. Worry about your house, not mine. I'm not speaking on it yet."
That is such an incredibly mature statement. She followed it up by asking the public for basic human decency, saying she hopes humanity can evolve to a place where kindness comes first.
She really demanded that a faceless crowd remember her humanity. And hey, if you're loving these Hollywood twists, make sure you subscribe because we've got even crazier stories ahead. But honestly, it brings up a huge psychological question. Why does the internet feel so uniquely entitled to tear down a teenager just trying to comfort her dad?
It's a great question. Like, if you saw that happening in a local coffee shop, you would never walk up and scream that you understand why their parents are getting divorced. But online, it happens instantly. To understand the mechanics behind that shift, we can look at a study from the Learn Journal that specifically analyzed the cyberbullying of public figures.
Okay, what do they find? Because I can't imagine how people justify saying those things to a kid.
Well, the researchers discovered this massive systemic normalization of cruelty. They found that adolescents, and even a large portion of adults, simply don't interpret their negative comments towards celebrities as bullying.
Wait, really? So typing "I'd file for divorce too" isn't categorized as bullying in their own minds? How are they justifying the behavior to themselves?
They perceive it as actively participating in popular culture. The study found that users view celebrity gossip and the subsequent harassment as this interactive, harmless entertainment. There's an underlying belief that because someone has a public profile, the public fundamentally owns the right to embarrass them.
That is incredibly dehumanizing. It's like fame completely voids the social contract of basic decency. They view the celebrities as being compensated with money and attention, and therefore enduring abuse is just, part of the job description.
Exactly. And the study highlights just how dangerous this normalization becomes through two specific tragic case studies. One involved Seo-yeon, a South Korean K-pop star.
Right. She was brutally harassed simply for identifying as a feminist and posting pictures without wearing a bra, which violated the strict patriarchal norms of her culture.
Yes. And the other case study followed Olivia, a UK reality host who became the target of relentless online abuse over an age gap relationship and a prior assault charge. In both cases, the sustained harassment contributed to these young women tragically taking their own lives.
The stakes are literally life and death. Did the researchers look into how the bullies were actually communicating? Like what tactics they were using?
They did, and the linguistic analysis is really fascinating. They found heavy use of two specific tactics, what they call representatives and indirect speech acts. A representative is when a commenter commits to a harsh, absolute truth. For example, labeling Olivia a women beater in all caps.
So it's not offered as a critique or an opinion. It's just a definitive, aggressive label meant to isolate the target. What about the indirect speech acts? How do those work?
An indirect speech act occurs when the bullying is disguised using the grammatical structure of a question or a command. For instance, commenting, "wear a bra," or asking Olivia, "Did you think about this before or after beating your fellow with a lamp?"
Oh, I see. So by phrasing it as a question, they create a layer of plausible deniability. They can tell themselves, or anyone who calls them out, "Hey, I was just asking a question." It protects their own ego from having to admit they are actually just being cruel.
Precisely. It allows them to inflict pain while maintaining their self-image as a good person who is just curious or trying to help.
Which perfectly explains that comment directed at Bailee. "I'd file for divorce too."
Huh.
It's framed as a casual observation, a hypothetical about the commenter's own preferences, but the actual mechanism is a targeted weaponization of her father's divorce. And later in this deep dive, we'll talk about the shocking twist nobody saw coming regarding her family history. Because the digital distance makes us all a little bit callous, doesn't it?
It really does. And what makes Bailee's plea for human decency so incredibly profound is the massive disconnect between what the internet thinks they know and what the family is actually experiencing.
The public is acting like they are leaving a one-star Yelp review, completely blind to the fact that the kitchen is on fire. To fully grasp her maturity on that stage, we have to look at the massive private trauma she has already survived.
Oh, right. The sources from Taste of Country dive into this, and it radically shifts the perspective. Bailee's biological mother is a woman named Felicia Beckwith, who has struggled with severe, life-threatening drug addiction for years.
And this isn't a new issue. Back in 2017, Jelly Roll and Bunnie actually had to step in and get full legal custody of Bailee simply to ensure she was in a safe environment. Bunnie really stepped into the role of a mother figure when Bailee was just a little girl.
She did, and she created a structured home life. But addiction is a relentlessly cruel disease, and periods of stability can be fragile. Which brings us to the harrowing summer of 2022. Bailee is 14 years old at this point.
Her biological mom had been sober, living in a structured recovery housing environment, so they carefully start rekindling their relationship. Jelly and Bunnie support this, operating under the belief that the environment is safe. But when Bailee goes to spend the summer with her mom, the situation rapidly deteriorates.
It wasn't just a relapse. Her mom actively brought her 14-year-old daughter into her addiction. The details from the podcast interview Bailee gave regarding this period are incredibly difficult to process.
Her mother initiated the cycle by providing her with alcohol and marijuana. It leverages that highly manipulative I'm the cool mom dynamic to break down the child's boundaries. And the escalation happens so terrifyingly fast.
Yeah, Bailee described a specific moment being in an empty Dollar General parking lot after a 4th of July party. She's already intoxicated, she doesn't want to consume anything else, but her mom uses immense psychological pressure to persuade her into trying her mom's drug of choice.
Which is just, it's horrifying.
Yeah.
From that night forward, for months, Bailee admitted she was never sober. She was consuming pills, marijuana, and alcohol on a daily basis at 14 years old, handed to her by her own mother.
The emotional weight of that betrayal is staggering, and all the while, Jelly Roll and Bunnie are back home. They sense a shift, but they attribute it to typical teenager moodiness. They are entirely unaware she's actively using hard narcotics.
It wasn't until Bailee returned home, hit a breaking point, and eventually confessed she needed help to stop, that they discovered the reality of what happened. And their response was immediate. Bunnie and Jelly stepped in, got her into intensive therapy, and actively helped her navigate the grueling process of getting sober.
Bunnie said something later that provides so much insight. She said that when she looked at Bailee struggling, she was looking at a younger version of herself. Bunnie survived an incredibly dark past, navigating the sex industry, dealing with severe addiction, and having an addict mother of her own. She understood the exact contours of Bailee's pain.
And if we pull back and look at the larger dynamic, the irony is just devastating. You have a chorus of millions on the internet judging this family's validity based on a 30-second video clip, mocking an 18-year-old and utilizing her parents' divorce as a prop for engagement.
All the while, they are entirely ignorant of the fact that Bailee and Bunnie's relationship wasn't constructed for Instagram aesthetics. It was forged in life-or-death trauma. Bunnie was instrumental in pulling Bailee out of a literal abyss.
It brings a whole new gravity to Bailee's TikTok post. Worry about your house, not mine. She has literally fought for her life inside her house. But stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next, because this brings us to a really complex question. If the reality of their family is this heavy and clearly this private, why does the broader public feel so fiercely possessive of them?
It's a wild dynamic. When the news of the divorce broke, the internet wasn't just casually gossiping. People were expressing genuine visceral anger. They felt personally betrayed by the split. And to understand where that intense entitlement comes from, we look at our final source, a study from the Carolina Digital Repository that examines a phenomenon researchers call parasocial parenting.
Okay, we are familiar with standard parasocial relationships, right? That one-sided bond where you listen to a podcaster and feel a deep sense of friendship. How does the concept of parenting alter that dynamic?
The study focuses on a specialized genre of TikTok creators who explicitly construct their digital personas as internet parents. They conducted a deep dive into a creator couple named Alex and Melinda Griswold, who literally branded their channel as the mom and dad of TikTok.
Right, they produce point-of-view style videos, speaking directly into the camera lens, offering highly idealized, unconditional love and validation. They are essentially role-playing the perfect parental figures for an audience of strangers.
Completely. They explicitly utilize the rhetoric of adoption. A common phrase in their content is, if you've watched any of our videos, you're adopted. They script and perform fictional scenarios like the viewer coming out or failing a major exam, and then they record the perfect, supportive parental reaction.
I can absolutely see the appeal.
Right.
For a teenager who is living in a toxic household, a video like that could provide a massive, albeit temporary, emotional safety net. Where is the danger in that?
The dynamic becomes highly problematic when this engineered intimacy is monetized. The study details how the Griswolds partnered with a mobile app called Ripple to create an interactive, gamified experience. Users download the app and play as the Griswolds' adopted child, sending them text messages.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and to access premium content. To receive the best, most loving and validating responses from your virtual parents' users, have to pay real currency through microtransactions.
That is wild. It transforms a supportive community into a literal vending machine for emotional validation. You insert a credit card, press a button, and receive a text message from dad telling you he is proud of you.
And the psychological impact of that transactional relationship is profound. The researchers documented what happened when the Griswolds temporarily ceased posting content because of burnout. The audience didn't just casually find another creator to watch. The comment sections flooded with expressions of genuine, devastating grief.
Users were commenting phrases like orphan party or stating, I just lost a mom and a dad today. The study argues that these users are heavily utilizing creators to fill actual, painful psychological voids in their offline lives.
Exactly. And that subtle, nagging feeling that a creator owes you content. That is the exact same seed of entitlement that drives parasocial parenting. And if we draw a line from the Griswolds directly to Jelly Roll and Bunnie X, the explosive reaction to the divorce suddenly makes complete sense.
Right. Look at the foundation of Jelly Roll's entire brand. His breakout anthem, Save Me, is a desperate, raw plea about profound brokenness and the nightmare of addiction. Bunnie built a massive podcast audience by being radically unfiltered and vulnerable about her traumatic past. They didn't cultivate a fan base of casual pop music listeners. They built a congregation.
That is the core mechanism. They attracted an audience of people carrying their own deep traumas, who looked at Jelly and Bunnie and saw surrogate figures of hope. They symbolized the idea that a person could be entirely broken, make catastrophic mistakes, and still achieve an epic love story and build a stable family.
So, when the news broke that Jelly Roll had filed for divorce, the fans didn't process it as two wealthy celebrities ending a marriage. Their psychological reaction was as if their own parents had just announced a divorce.
And that intense parasocial attachment is what morphed into the highly toxic entitlement we saw directed at Bailee. The fans felt that because they emotionally invested their own hopes in the couple's redemption narrative, they quite literally owned a stake in the family.
When the actual trajectory of the family deviated from the happy ending the fans desperately needed, they lashed out in anger. They felt entirely morally justified in inserting themselves into Bailee's life and critiquing her vulnerable moment on stage.
In the minds of the commenters, she wasn't a real 18-year-old girl navigating her parents' split. She was simply a supporting character in a digital reality show that they felt they had paid for with their attention.
It takes that learned journal cyberbullying study, where the brain tricks itself into believing it has the right to harass public figures, and it supercharges it with the volatile emotional baggage of a child going through a divorce. It is a perfect storm of unresolved personal trauma from the audience colliding with the powerful illusion of intimacy generated by algorithms.
Which is why unpacking these events requires looking far beyond the tabloid headlines. We have to examine the structures that encourage this specific type of detachment.
We have covered incredible ground today. We started by looking at a viral video of a father-daughter duet that was instantly weaponized by trolls alongside a shocking headline about a country music divorce.
From there, we examined the hidden psychological mechanisms of cyberbullying, specifically how linguistic tactics like indirect speech acts insulate us from the cruelty of our own words.
We then stepped away from the screen to look at the harrowing reality of Bailee and Bunnie's life, the very real trauma of severe addiction, familial manipulation, and a family fighting to save their daughter.
And finally, we explored the complex phenomenon of parasocial internet parenting. We saw how a desperate human need for connection can easily twist into a toxic, transactional entitlement over the lives of strangers.
It really forces a moment of reflection regarding how we consume media every single day. The next time you read a headline or you feel the urge to leave a sharp comment, ask yourself, do you remember that the people on the screen are complex, flawed, breathing human beings? Or have you slowly been conditioned to treat them as reality show characters existing solely to entertain you?
It's an essential question, particularly as the boundaries between public performance, algorithmic engagement, and private pain continue to dissolve.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We discussed how internet influencers are already monetizing parasocial parenting through apps and microtransactions. But consider the current trajectory of technology. As algorithms become exponentially more sophisticated at feeding us exactly the kind of curated internet family we crave, what happens when artificial intelligence fully steps into that role?
We are already seeing the deployment of AI chatbots explicitly designed to mimic supportive friends or romantic partners. What happens to our society when an entire generation realizes they can simply download an AI that perfectly mimics an endlessly supportive, unfailing parent?
If human beings can eventually receive perfect, frictionless emotional validation on demand from a machine, will we eventually lose our capacity to empathize with the messy, painful, entirely unscripted reality of actual human relationships? Will we forget how to deal with real people and real pain entirely? It's something to think about the next time the house lights go down, a vulnerable moment happens on stage, and the crowd pulls out their phones to hit record. You've been listening to Starscope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood music and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.